So yes, as you were saying, I have been in practice for nearly 15 years. I did a shipping pupillage originally. I hadn't been a law graduate, so I had to do the GDL and then what used to be called the BDC, but is now called something else again, having been the bar professional training course at one stage. And then, yes, I've worked in 3 law firms since then. And I've been at my current firm for exactly 8 years yesterday. So I did the classic, after GCSEs for A-levels, I did the classic essay subjects. So I did English and history, but I did like science as well. So I'd done geography as my other A-level. And then when it came to university, I went for history because my mother had been a barrister as well. So one of those very rare first women who'd gone to the bar. And she had read law at university, and she said that she regretted it because she said you could study anything at university, but if you're going to do a profession of law for 40 years, why not have a hinterland and have some other, strings to your bow? And she said she'd always felt those people who'd studied other subjects had, something different to bring to the table. So anyway, she persuaded me, not that I needed much persuading, to do history as undergraduate. So I did my history undergraduate, but then I'd always thought I might want to go to the bar. Everyone had always said I was very argumentative and I should go to the bar. And so, yeah, I then did the law conversion at the end of my history degree. I think it's because I always saw 2 sides to an argument. And so I wasn't contrary as a child in the sense that I would always argue, but I always saw things from the multiple perspectives. And I think that's what you need to do as a lawyer. You need to be able to see all sides of the argument. It'll make you a much better lawyer, because a lot of cases are never going to litigate the full way to the end of a trial. And really, they shouldn't. You should be able to find a resolution. Sometimes, obviously, the resolution will be a judge resolution with a judgment, but other times it's in the interests of the client to see from the other perspective. And so your job as a lawyer is to be able to see both sides. Yeah. And so I actually think that is what drew me to the law originally. And also, once I started actually studying it for the GDL, I realized that it is the infrastructure that holds up everything from your, getting on the bus in the morning, that kind of tap on the card as a contract with, TfL, or buying your coffee, or if you slip on the pavement, there's all, it's the magic kind of rubrics that is surrounding everything in life. And I think this is why I would always say I'm a contract lawyer, a commercial contract litigator. And that was what I found I liked the most at law school. Crime was interesting, but too much heavy responsibility and emotional baggage with it. So I was very lucky in that I liked contract law the best. I have to say, my mother was not very helpful in my career at all. She had been in the government legal service. She had not been in chambers. And her view was still that women weren't really sort of welcomed in chambers, and that I should definitely be applying for government legal jobs. But it's quite difficult to get pupillage anywhere, but there's more pupillages in chambers than there is at the GLS. And actually I wanted to be in chambers. I liked the idea of being a sole practitioner, self-employed at the time. Little did I know that actually I'm not really suited to it. But so I had been quite late applying to do the law conversion. I was kind of halfway through the February-March time of my final year at university, and a friend who was studying at another university came to visit, a school friend, and I said, "Oh, what are you going to do next year?" And they were like, "Oh, well, I'm becoming a barrister." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I was thinking of doing that too." And they're like, "Well, the deadline's tomorrow." And I was like, "What?" And so my entire legal career is built on one night of intensive work, filling in the GDL form. But yeah, it closed at midday on the Monday, and so I filled in. And then I didn't really, I did then it was finals, and I was doing lots of work, and then I had a very nice summer. And before I went, in fact, I worked, and I started the GDL in the late September, and we had an introductory session where they said, obviously you'll all have been doing your mini pupillages over the summer. And I was like, oh, a mini what? I didn't really know what it was. And so I spent the first weekend, I went online and looked up, realized I hadn't applied for any of these kind of work experience mini pupillage things. Also realized I needed to be doing mooting, which I didn't even know what it was at the time, because I hadn't started the law review at that stage. And the GDL is for solicitors and barristers, but you suddenly realize that there's all this stuff you should have been doing. So I did actually quite rapidly build up my kind of bar CV in that autumn, and I sent off kind of 15 mini pupillage letters to get mini pupillages, and I joined the debating team at VPP, which is where I was doing the GDL, and the mooting team. I entered the competitions and entered the competition at my inn, and so I went from like 0 to 100 in the space of 3 months to fill in my CV, because the first pupillage applications were opening in the December, and I applied in the first. So it used to be there was applications pre the pupillage portal, and the pupillage portal opened in kind of April, but there was people who went early from December, January, February. And so I put in for those for interview practice, and I genuinely did not think I would get pupillage in the first year I applied. But I did, which was probably a bad thing, to be honest, because it meant I went and did pupillage immediately after my end of my bar course, and I probably could have done with knowing a bit more law before I did it. I wouldn't say it was last minute applications, in the sense that I realized in the September that I had a lot to fill in my CV, and so I every hour of those 3 months I ensured my CV was up to date. And then when I did the applications, I spent time on the applications. The applications were crafted. I am quite lucky that I'm really good at forms. Just knowing how to fill them in or what people want from them, it's a skill. I don't know. I'm very good at getting jobs. It's not necessarily ones I'm qualified for, so I was surprised to get pupillage. I actually got pupillage offers. What they used to be, because they used to be outside of the system, they would explode after 2 weeks. And I had a pupillage offer from a planning set, and I didn't even want to do planning. I had literally just applied for interview practice, and so I felt awful and terrible. And so I turned it down. But then everyone was like, "You can't downtown pupillage." And then I got a shipping one like the next week, and so I was like, right, well, I'll take the shipping one. It's a contract with extra whistles. So that's. But I have to say, one of the things I'm really quite proud about is I chair the committee at the Bar Council that is responsible for Pupillage Gateway. And I got it changed so that everything was aligned, so that people didn't have to make this terrible choice, that everyone's offers get made at the same time.
So you're responsible for that.
I'm responsible for that, because I actually think it was unfair the way it was used to run. And I really advocated for that very strongly over the last couple of years. So pupillage decisions used to be taken at 6 months. And so, and not that I was in any way surprised, because my 2 co-pupils at my set had both read law at Cambridge with firsts, and then had done the BCL at Oxford. So I would be a little bit surprised if I had known the same law as them, having done the GDL. I did. I mean, I wasn't surprised that I wasn't offered tenancy at 6 months, but I had third 6 pupillage offers. So there used to be quite a big market in third 6s. But my pupil supervisor, who in fact had been in favour of being taken on, and I got on very well with, he said, don't take any of those. They're all for kind of steps that are level down from what we do. You should apply for US law firms, because at the time lots of them didn't have trainees, and so they would fill in their newly qualified ranks with barristers. And then he said you could do that for 2 to 3 years, pay off all your debts, because you get paid, American firms pay a lot of money, and then you can come back to the bar at the same level. Come back into a chambers. And so that was what I intended to do, but I just never came back into chambers yet. I might still, but I haven't yet. Oh yes, definitely. And there was friends of mine from bar school who did exactly the same. You know, they didn't get taken on as tenants in the chambers they were. They went out to the employed bar or to industry, and they've now gone back into chambers at frankly much better set than they would ever have got a pupillage in. I have to say the practicing certificate is the kind of the golden ticket in the sense that once you've got that, you can do lots of different things. I've just been away the last few days with friends from bar school, and one of them found it quite difficult. He wanted a European practice, which is more commercial set pupillage, but he really did not have the grades for it or the background from university. So he eventually got a criminal pupillage, even though he had no intention of ever practicing crime. But he did his year of criminal pupillage, and then that meant he could go off and apply for kind of jobs in European kind of lobbying firms and law firms. And he now is head of policy at Clifford Chance for public policy. And so that's how he has, molded his career. But in order to get his start, he obviously had to get, he needed to get his qualification. And in the end, he did a criminal pupillage because that's what he could get, even though he had no intention of ever doing crime, ever. I've chaired the employed bar twice, which has been very rewarding. I made it my kind of mission to make it more equal for employed barristers. There was restrictions in place which were ridiculous. So, for example, employed barristers can't be a member of the Welsh and Chester circuit.
For no reason.
For no reason. It's involved. It's a 5-year process in that there was a vote, but then it was unconstitutional because 2/3 of the members needed it. So then they needed to change the constitution so that they could get enough members through. Anyway, finally it might be there. But I also got at things like that employed barristers who worked in the government legal service couldn't apply to be judges. I've got that changed. They just can't sit in the area that they work for the government in because you have to do part-time sitting really to get. And things like the employed barristers who are members of the Commercial Bar Association couldn't go onto their conference for no apparent reason. No, who knows? So it's all these kind of things just, that got changed, which I'm, quite proud of to get changed. But I chaired the Bar Association for Commerce, Finance and Industry, which is the specialist bar association. So how it works is there is bar council committees, which are emanations of the Bar Council. And then there are specialist bar associations, which are standalone. So something like the Criminal Bar Association is a standalone association. So I essentially have chaired both sides of the employed bar, in the one that's inside the Bar Council and the one that is external. And then the annual bar conference in 2018, I was the chair of. And now I chair the Bar Representation Committee, which is barristers have to pay, the practicing certificate fee, but then there is an optional payment of £150 for the BRF, which is essentially their union dues. That is the representative fee that actually the Bar Council gets their money from. So if people don't pay it, there is no money for the Bar Council. And it's essentially therefore the commercial arm of the bar. So many different things come under the bar representation fee, everything from ID, security cards at courts, to certificates of good standing, to the pupillage portal. So it's quite a wide-ranging role, and it's very commercial, and you do it for 3 to 5 years, and I've now done it for 3 years. Yes, I got made a bencher in 2020. So I was the last intake where you did not apply, you were offered. And they changed the rules last year. Grays was the last in to change it, but now people apply. And so interestingly, as a bencher last year, I saw all the application forms because obviously the benchers then got given all the application forms, and then you had a debate about who should be going forward as benchers.
Interesting. So that was a really good timing for you to kind of be in that position
Actually, I wouldn't have applied. So the interesting thing is I wouldn't have applied because I wouldn't have applied. So I would have waited another 5 years or something. But what I find fascinating now is that because people know I'm a bencher, lots of people last year and now again this year have asked me to look at their forms, and there is I think it's encouraged a lot of people to put themselves forward who wouldn't have put themselves forward, and it's definitely opening up the bench at Grays. It's a good move. And the interesting thing is obviously one of the criteria for the application is service to the inn. So people are applying who are already involved in the life of the inn and have been all the way through. But there is also, it says, or future service to the inn. So it may be some people wrote last year on their forms, look, I haven't been very involved for the last 20 years, but I now want to get involved and this is how I can help. Oh, definitely, for sure, that there is a concerted effort. I think the Inn Bar Council know that they need to involve more people, and that they can't just have, and this is why, I'm the youngest. There are benchers at Grays who are 40 years older than me, but I now have exactly the same say as them. Or the Bar Council has done kind of great work on young leadership. Last year, they started this leadership program that people could apply for because they want to get people who are under 10 years cool kind of more involved, and the number of applicants was kind of huge. And I sat on the scholarship interviews for Grays last year, having done the SIFT the year before, and I did the SIFT again this year. And there's been a lot of effort putting into kind of leveling up the kind of the playing field. So just because someone has a 2-1 from Oxford or Cambridge does not even guarantee them a scholarship interview anymore, because the criteria that they're now marked against, that doesn't matter. If you've got a 2-1, it doesn't matter which university it's from, you automatically get 18 points out of 25. And then the rest of the points are made up about other things on the form. Are you involved in mooting and debating? How much? It's the hunger that people want to see on the form. And I always say to students, actually, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't. In some ways, you could have been the captain of your taekwondo team at university, as long as you can show kind of leadership and what it's taught you, which will be useful for your career as a barrister. Almost everything can be connected. So I did not know about the GDL scholarships when I applied for GDL, and I kick myself now because I think, frankly, I would have got one, and it would have been useful for the money and also for the CV points, because it's a sad thing to say, but success breeds success. So if you're someone who's looking at pupillage applications, if someone's got a scholarship from the Inn, it means that they've already gone through a process and had a kind of stamp of approval, and it's unfortunately kind of nature that you therefore pay more attention to that candidate because you think this person has already had a seal of approval.
That's right.
So I didn't know for the GDL, but then obviously I did for the bar course. And I applied and got a scholarship, which did make a difference quite significantly because the fees then were nowhere near as high as they are now, but it left me short with living expenses, it left me short about £6,000 for the year bar course, which actually I could earn over the summer.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So I didn't have a huge debt. And that is one of the reasons I then took the American law firm job, so I could clear all my debt within 2 years, which I did, which is now you just could not do without being really savvy. I mean, it just, because the cost of university now means that most people are coming into the average debt on the bar school application forms that I was sifting through at Christmas, because I looked at over 160, was around £50,000. And also, I should just mention that there is a hardship working group at Grays and at all the other free inns as well, which is money available for students outside of the scholarship fund. So if a student needs money for some other reason, like something else comes up, they can always apply outside of the scholarship system to the hardship grant, which I did not know about at all, and only because of COVID did I get to know about it. And then I sit on the committee for it now for Grays. And Grays, we've still got a lot of money left in the pot for it. People didn't apply as much as we thought they would, frankly. So, and I think that maybe because people didn't really know it existed, even though the Inn tried to put out communications about it. I think people felt if they hadn't got an interview for the scholarships, and they wouldn't get anything from the hardship working group. But they're completely different, and they're completely different criteria. Essentially, it is for like with your friend, if you're not going to be able to complete the bar course because of its circumstances, then this is what this is for, to help people with those final fee top-ups. Or we had someone whose laptop had been stolen, and the cost of a new laptop was just too expensive. They just kind of hadn't got the budget for like an extra £6,000, whatever it was going to cost. And so we gave them the money for a new laptop so that they could continue their studies. I mean, the hardship fund is specifically not for barristers, so that the bar benevolence fund is for barristers, but the Inns, it is for students only, and I don't think students realise that. For pupil applications, like, it is a given, you must have mooting, probably debating as well. You must have pro bono. You must have mini pupillages, and then something else. And it doesn't matter what it is, but something that shows leadership and shows drive. So everyone in my bar school class eventually got pupillage because they all wanted it. I did have friends who didn't get pupillage in the end, but I always felt that's because they never bothered to enter a moot competition. They never bothered to do any pro bono. If you've got nothing to put on your application forms, you're not going to get through the sift, and you're certainly not going to have anything to talk about at the interviews. I would say the mark scheme for the scholarships is very similar to the mark schemes I've seen for pupillages, which is there's always a category for problem solving. So they want to see your ability to solve a problem. There's always a category on advocacy. So they want to see your ability for oral advocacy. There's always a category on kind of drive and determination and motivation to succeed. And that is where, frankly, if you haven't got the best grades in the world and you're not the greatest advocate, but you can demonstrate, as I said, a hunger for it, you will shine through. And people who just rely on the academics just won't make it through anymore. You have to have the full package. Keep going. Because if you want it badly enough, you will get it. And there is multiple ways to come at it. If you have to kind of change your angle a bit, like my friend Philip, he just was never going to get into the top commercial European sets like Nature's or Monkton, Brickcourt, etc.
Right.
But he had to change his line of attack, and so he did his criminal pupillage because he could get into a criminal set, but then then got into the Europe Business Network as his employed bar job, and then from there managed to get into public policy work at the European Council, and then from there is now head of public policy at Good Chance. So he got there in the end. And I have another friend who really wanted to do commercial work, but again wasn't getting commercial pupillages. Got a kind of middle ranking kind of civil set pupillage. Went out to two law firms, in fact, first kind of Hogan Lovells, and then an American law firm, and is now doing commercial law at Blackstone's. It took him 6 years to get there, but he eventually got there. So it's like if you can't get there the direct route, just think about how you can go round the problem. What can you do to get there another way? And one of the reasons to get involved, I probably initially applied for the Bar Council straight after the end of pupillage, because I thought if I want to go back into chambers in 2 to 3 years, I need to keep in contact with the bar and build network. But the reason I'm still doing it 15 years later is I don't need the network anymore. It's because actually I really enjoy the fact that I learn different new skills by being involved in these committees, especially on the Bar Representation Committee, because essentially it's a commercial arm of the bar. I learn loads about everything from the IT infrastructure behind the pupillage gateway and Ruby and Rails who run it, and whether we should put it out to tender or whether we should bring it in-house and own it ourselves. And the ID cards, the costing on what exactly we should charge for them, because there's how many people are going to apply, how many do we think, the metrics on it. So, will the cost of a £23,000 person a year to run the scheme be covered by the cost of the scheme? I mean, I would never have thought to do a shipping pupillage. I mean, I got it and I did it, but I actually really enjoyed shipping. I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life, but I wanted to do more, wider commercial contract. But I definitely, it's a great foundation for law. I feel every single second of every day. But that is my way of relaxing, as in it would stress me out to be at home with nothing to do. So actually my mental health is maintained by being busy. and because I do so many different things, it's not like I'm doing the same thing, because I do lots of different activities and I sit on lots of different boards, and I don't just do law in my spare time. I've got, I'm governor of a school and things like that. I think the thing I'm most proud of and excited about is that the government appointed me to value treasure in 2020 for the next 10 years. So for the next decade, anything that is gold or silver, if you know your Treasure Act 1996, 10% gold or silver, more than one coin, because 2 coins make a hoard, then I'm on the committee, of which there is 6 of us, who value the finds that are found by metal detectorists if museums want to buy them. So we set the price. I got that because of from my history, and because I've always collected coins, and I'm quite heavily involved in the antique jewelry world in my spare time. And so that's one of those things where the application came up. I saw it on Coin News, because I sadly read Coin News, and the criteria were an interest in knowledge in English hammered coins, medieval jewelry, committee experience, and understanding the legal framework of the Treasure Act. And I was like,
everything.
I can do this. I mean, the fact that the rest of the people on the committee are people like the keeper of the coins at the British Museum or the head of the Metal and V&A is not a problem. No, I love it, and I'm just sad you can only do 10 years on the committee. It's once in a lifetime appointment for 10 years. I think probably only 2 words: ever onwards. Students should take from that, everyone listening, just to take all opportunities.